Windsor here. There's the Airbus A400.
Oh, you can go inside the plane.
The sound you can hear is the 1600 horsepower engine, so another step up from the PC9. We went from 950 horsepower all the way up to 1600 horsepower, so that gives us a top speed of 685 kilometres an hour, and we can fly up to 25,000 feet. Or that fly past there was about 200 feet, so a little bit lower than what we usually fly at, but the roulettes are well trained, and this is our role. Let's listen.
End of the airfield, and they'll do a simultaneous loop with both of the aircraft. Then one of them will be doing a fully developed spin, and we'll be spinning down to quite low. Every year as a part of our annual flight review, all glider pilots must go into a fully developed spin and be able to recover. It's part of our training, part of the constant safety regime. The other aircraft will be doing some other aerobatics after that, and once they come around, the glider that spins all the way to the ground will do a high energy finish, so he'll come with quite a low pass going from left to right across the airfield, flying at about 147 knots. And the other aircraft will stay quite high, and you'll notice when they come into land, the first aircraft will do a fairly normal type of landing. The other aircraft will come in quite high, and they're just releasing now, ladies and gentlemen. And he'll come into a steep descent.
Tom, before you go on with the description here, the dual tow, is it actually difficult to do?
It's not that difficult to do, you just need to be... Yeah, it's a bit unusual, it certainly is. Yeah. And one aircraft stays low, one aircraft stays high, and the length of the ropes is different for both as well.
What about the actual towing plane, the crop duster itself? Does it not feel the drag?
It does, but it's got lots of power, so it's able to get through quite nicely. I believe we've got some music for you while this routine goes ahead.
Just while our DJ gets our tunes all ready, good on you, Neil. Oh, look at it, we've got an ibis flying above us too. There's all sorts of bird life here. But if you're looking up, look at that now. Describe this to us, Tom.
This is just doing a loop at the moment. Looping is probably one of the easiest aerobatic manoeuvres to do, and probably the first aerobatic manoeuvre that we teach people to do. And he's just going through with another loop. And the aircraft on the left-hand side is actually just coming in now for a high-speed, low-level pass, while the other aircraft is continuing. The other aircraft's now doing a stall turn. Oh, go a little bit weightless at the top of that and come around. It's fantastic manoeuvre. Oh, you just feel your bottom and just come out of the seat a little bit. Beautiful. That glider just going in front of us now is going about 147 knots at the moment, about to pull up, and he'll come around and do a normal type of landing, as we would any other time. The other aircraft's just done another stall turn. And as he comes out of that, I think at this stage, yeah, then he goes for another loop. We also have the tug aircraft holding out on the other side of the airfield, waiting till the gliders land.
So does the one doing the loops, has he got the shorter wingtips on, the 18 metre?
He does, yes. Yes, he does. And the other one actually does have the longer tips on at the moment, but they can do them with the shorter tips or the longer tips. Just sometimes it's a bit better with the shorter tips. So you'll notice he's flying across quite high now across the airfield, the one straight in front of us. We've got the other one on the right-hand side coming in to land now, just doing a normal type of landing for a glider.
Tom, at breakfast this morning with Ando, he was talking about Avalon Airfield, where there are kites, you know, as in birds that
Yes.
fly as one of the gliders comes in.
Yep.
And they use the thermals, basically. Same concept?
Exactly the same concept, and that's one of the beautiful things with gliding is you can find yourself in the same thermal with an eagle or a kite, and it's amazing to look out there and you can see them looking right at you.
That must be astounding, honestly.
It's ethereal.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had that in the 80s flying Blanix up in Queensland, and absolutely amazing to... the guys on the ground called up and said, just look up, and sure enough there was a big old eagle way above us.
Right up there. And we just see the gliders to the right-hand side now descending very quickly in pretty much a full dive. They're pretty much called a full dive brake, which they can point the nose straight to the ground as long as the air brake's all the way out. It can't go past its limited, that it's allowed at full speed. He's coming in for a beautiful landing. So if anybody wants to have a go at gliding, you can come out to Gawler Airfield, you just ring up the office and you can come out and have an air experience flight, and we can even do some air...
Trainer formation taking off. The looks like the Windjills going first, followed by a couple of CT-4As. We'll talk more about them and be joined by a special guest to help us with that commentary when they come back around.
Young Matt Henderson, appendicitis Henderson, we should call him.
Appendicin.
Hassling him now when he can't answer back on the mic.
He was at the nil show and he flew and then he got sick. This was only last week.
And he was supposed to be in this formation, and if you think he's pouring the floor to be out there, you're absolutely correct.
Once these three aircraft, the classics, which will be three down.
Calcium these days.
I've never ever seen one of these flying before. STA. No, it's not.
Give him a big wave. Morning, Steve.
Jaunty wave, pilot of the Moss Miner.
It's incredible to think that you've got the Tiger Moth that first flew 1931, the Dragon, which is the first aircraft, 1932, and yet the Moth Miner all the way...
Very new. Airworthy at the moment, there'd be over 70 Tiger Moths in the country at the moment, that are flying quite regularly. With the Havilland Dragon that's leaving for display today, has only been flying for about 5 weeks now. He's a very well-renowned maintainer and restorer of aircraft.
That aircraft is actually expanded out to the Fox Moth to put the little cabin in the front.
Yeah, you'll find these days, if you've got a spot the dog on. It's wonderful that these aircraft, Tiger Moth itself, has the backbone of all of the Commonwealth training during the Second World War.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at the Moss Miner courses, by two CT4s,
One owned and operated by Gary Hearn and the other by Murray Wallace, both who were ex-Army aviators, and now private owners of those aircraft within the Air Force Museum. The full team first getting together, planned up to aircraft competing with spot. That was introduced as well.
Aircraft has to go at quite a high angle, so it doesn't go too fast to be able to put the gear up. If you overspeed, you could rip the gear. It is a very small aircraft. It only has a wingspan of about 35 feet in the old money, and about just under 30 feet long. Now, this aircraft was designed as a counter-insurgency aircraft in the 1960s. And that was not a term that was in common parlance at that time. US Air Force was seeking a coin aircraft. So what Cessna did was they had a competition with a upgraded design of their T-37 Twit, the trainer, which is the noisiest aircraft in the US Air Force inventory. They upgraded the engines considerably, strengthened the wings, put hard points under each side that could carry pylons. It's got a straight wing, so it's not a high-performance aircraft. It is high performance in what it was able to do. If you have a look at the armament that it could carry, there are 8 underwing hard points, as we mentioned earlier on. It can carry 4 or 7-shot, 2.75-inch rockets. So you have this huge but the CEOs of a number of major companies in Australia prior to the outbreak of World War II, they knew what was going to happen. They could see the aviation industry. You know, guys like Essington Lewis, who was the CEO of BHP, you know, ICI, CSA, they all banded together, formed a sent a deputation overseas under Lawrence Wackett. Wackett was a World War I pilot. He was also an aircraft designer. He built a thing called the Tugan Gannet, which is rather an odd aeroplane, but he was a very astute man. Went overseas, went to the UK, they presented pretty much obsolete types, except something very specialised, the Westland Lysander. He went to America then, and went to North American Aviation. They looked at an aircraft that they were producing there called the NA-16, and he said, this is what we need. Came back to Australia, the government was horrified. Why aren't we buying British?
Oh, of course.
Rather than buying the best, we'll buy something else. So he had his way, fortunately, and we eventually built 755 of these aircraft. They bought 2 examples back. You get it with a fixed number camera during the training call. And we built those things. They were general purpose machines for radio cylinders or radio around
Sort of thing. I've seen a lot of the pilots, they look in the briefing and they look the era.
Well, they certainly do. And if you ever come to Temora and see Guy Burke dressed up in his World War II Spitfire gear,
as well, if you
just be very distressing for the parents and for the young kiddie as well.
And I suppose if young Jimmy is hearing us, and I guess that Jimmy would be, Jimmy, just go to a grown-up in a uniform, if you can see one.
That's the one. Speaking of seeing things, looking out on the runway, a very, very important piece of history taking off.
The Lockheed Hudson. What we're about to see is a demonstration by the sole survivor of 7 or so of these left. Incredible. And another one is behind there. There it is, rolling right now.
as a historian, Peter, do you feel quite sad about that? Almost an extinct plane now.
It is, and yet I'm very fortunate that I get to see this aircraft at Temora quite often fly, and get to commentate on it, as well as one of these Boomerangs. But it gives me a great sense of pride to think of what the guys did that was there for the fences. They tore them down and smelted them down for war material, pots and pans.
People were even collecting alfoil.
Anything, anything at all that would aircraft graveyards, they just chop them all up. For example, there's a Liberator bomber that they're trying to put together now. We had hundreds of them here, and most of them were chopped up at Tokemwal. Look at this beautiful formation. We'll let you hear the sound of these wonderful radial engines. Used to do to prevent dirt getting in there, they used to put a canvas cover over the top and dope it so that it was taut. As soon as the guns fired, they fired through that. It didn't affect the projectiles, but what it did was to protect the guns and the barrels. When they are open, they have a certain sound because the air is disturbed around that hole in the leading edge of the wing. Especially two Boomerangs.
Well, it's true that one of these Boomerangs actually had a proper landing in Cape York.
Jim Wally's aircraft, he actually was flying that machine, and that was his dad's.
Wow.
To be able to find the aircraft and the remains of it and then have it rebuilt to airworthy condition. These are currently the only two Boomerangs flying in Australia. There's a Boomerang ski, I suppose you could call it, flying in Belgium. It's a bit of a hodgepodge. It's a bit of a hodgepodge, actually. It's not built to the same system.
We've talked a lot about planes that create a lot of emotion. And, it makes you sort of pleased to know about them and see them, and it's a wonderful experience. But was there ever a dud? Was there ever, and we're not seeing them today, but was there ever something you think,
oh no, lots of duds, really? Lots of duds, because they were trialling. And that was Australia's May 1942, so only a matter of months later.
That's 5 months after Pearl Harbor, basically.
Yeah, the prototype flew. And what I said earlier on about CAC, we got the license to build the aircraft, but the license to manufacture variants. And again, this is Lawrence Wacker, very astute man.
So like today, where it takes years for acquisition to actually get them on the front line, these things are taking months.
Months. What they did, they got the biggest engine that was being produced in Australia for the Beaufort bomber. They modified as much as Lockheed had produced a number of twin-tail, twin-engine aircraft, and they produced them as airliners. First the Lockheed 10, and that was successful, so they produced a smaller version, like a 5-6 seater, called the Lockheed 12. And in fact,
someone else in the skies.
Yeah, we have some very rare aeroplanes here.
That's an open cockpit.
No, he's just got the canopy out. Oh, he's got the canopy out. Standard procedure. The Spitfire. representing with Australia's only and the Southern Hemisphere's only flying Hurricane, and one of the 2 Spitfires currently flying here in Australia.
Get the different sounds.
Could also slip the over. Different types of parameters, one smaller than the other. There's 2 different airframe structures.
Bad.
Of course, the Battle of Britain being the defining battle that really set out the path towards the end of the Second World War. It was conducted in 1940.
Major impact on the sheet that just all over Europe, and then ready to continue on definitely UK. And as Churchill said, you protected the men. And thanks to the efforts, heroic efforts of so many people from all around the world, because flying the Hurricanes and the Spitfires were pilots from all over the Commonwealth. Also the US, there were some US pilots flying in the RAF before the US officially entered the war. The Eagles pilots.
Czechoslovakia,
French, 2 actual planes that we're seeing now, the actual planes.
It took a while to get those big wings sorted out, but I believe Douglas Bader was a component. He was very enthusiastic. Radiators on the front, very distinctive. And as you said, I know if they had have kept bombing the airfields, there would have been no way to throw people up, because they couldn't get people, the aircraft.
taking advantage of what had been known as the Rolls-Royce PV-12. Or better known as the Hurricane End. Yep, right on here. This aircraft is a Canadian car and foundry built aircraft, and they built 1,400 of these in Canada. The total production by hawkers was 14,500. So it was quite a large production run of an aircraft which really had limited development potential, unlike the Spitfire. It has a very deep wing. The fuselage is made up of steel tubes, but they're not welded.
How does that work?
They're round tubes squared off at the end, and then you've got gusset, stainless steel gusset plates with ferrules and nuts joining the clusters, and then they're all wire braced. Over that you've got wooden frames. Joining the wooden frames are wooden strings, and over that is fabric. And even in the original Mark I's, the wings were fabric covered. So this harkens back to the demons and the hearts and that.
Cruise, you could actually cruise at about 1.6 in dry power. You didn't need the afterburner.
Just to get afterburner to get through, and then
Yeah.
So
we just listen here to the sound of the Mustang taking off, that beautiful Merlin.
this is a delightful aircraft. That lovely dismation goes to jet rudder fire. You're rolling target for straight. Bombing runs.
They went to North American Aviation and said, can you build a B-40 for us? Certainly took a long time between the Spitfire and Mustang, but in that time a lot of technologies developed. The laminar flow wing that they were able to employ. And you have a look at the oil cooler and radiator under the fuselage. it was so designed that it actually did produce thrust, even with the low-powered Allison engine.
This aircraft today is owned and being flown by Jeff Trappett, aka Trappo. Jeff's a retired RAAF pilot, flown all sorts of aircraft from the C-47 aka DC-3 and the Caribou, all the way through to the F-111, as well as being an instructor and a member of the Roulettes. And he owns this aircraft and a number of others, and I think he gets probably a bit more pleasure flying this one. It certainly is a Cadillac, I believe you've called it, Ando.
The Cadillac of the skies. This aircraft actually is an Australian-built aircraft. One of 200 built here, and we were the only country to produce it in the United States. Again, a product of the Commonwealth Aircraft Corporation. Over 16,700 Mustangs built.